Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a Fire Sorcerer build guide for in Baldur's Gate 3. Now there's some interesting gear in Act 3 that allows this to be a very powerful class. I personally prefer lightning or cold damage, but the Fire Sorcerer is also really great as well. So we're going to start off with the Sorcerer, as this gets Constitution saving throw proficiency, and it gives us a lot of nice goodies, and it's obviously the focus of this build. So we're going to go with the Draconic Bloodline here, as this is going to be the main driver of this build. So you can put whatever type of bloodline you want there, but we're going to have to go with either the fire ancestry here, so red or gold. So your options are disguise, self, or burning hands. I would rather go with this one here. Just give yourself a close range fire attack at early game. It's not the best, but it is something. And as far as cantrips go, we'll take Firebolt, obviously. I like Bone Chill just for the effect that you can get, preventing target from healing, which can actually help it a lot in the end game. Mage Hand is pretty good too if you want to throw the pots of oil to be able to set up fire. And Minor Illusion's also really nice too to group enemies together for a fireball. I usually like to take Shocking Grasp or Ray of Frost, but those are more so for a wet build, and this isn't going to be wet. But you could also go with something like Shocking Grasp, just to have an option if there is water around. Now for our spells, I think it's essential to take Shield, so we're going to go Shield. And then Chromatic Orb, as this is the only option for fire damage early on. Magic Missile is another great option too, but Chromatic Orb can be changed to fire damage, which would sit alongside this build, so I guess we'll remove that there. And yeah, for our ability scores, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because we want to have a few different ability scores. Now, if you're in the end game, I would recommend dumping your Constitution and using the Constitution Amulet, as that gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws, which is really nice to hold your concentrations. But we're going to go with our highest stat being Charisma, and then we're also going to take up our Constitution up to 16. Dexterity somewhere around there, and intelligence at 12. It'd be better to be able to put up a little bit more intelligence if you want to take the wizard alongside this. One level of wizard will give us a few different spells that we can use. But something like this, ideally we would have our dexterity at like 14, but we do have to kind of go between a couple stats here. So something like this. But again, if you have the Constitution Amulet, you can dump down your Charisma or your Constitution, and then you can go all in on like Dexterity and your Intelligence. So something like that if you're going that route. But yeah, I'm going to get into the gear at the end of the video, as this is more, the gear that I'm wearing is more so for aesthetic purposes at the moment. And yeah, we'll get into things here. The Sorcerer level 2, we get another spell slot, and I would recommend taking Magic Missile. Sometimes the only spell that can hit a target is Magic Missile, so you usually want to have that around. And we also get our Meta Magics, Twin Spell, and Distance Spell. So Distance Spell increases the range by 50%, and melee spells get a 9-meter range. Twin Spell allows you to cast a spell on 2 targets, which is really great early on. But also, you can Twin Haste. Give yourself haste, give a teammate haste. It's broken. Really powerful. So yeah, that's what we're going to go with for level 2 of the Sorcerer. And getting into level 3 here, we also get the Quickened spell, which is the best meta magic. So action that costs an action costs a bonus action instead. And we actually have a piece of gear that allows us to cast 3 spells in one turn, which is really great. And I'll get into that later on in the video. But for our spells at level 2, I think Scorching Ray is a great option. I'm also a fan of going with Hold Person just for the crowd control, and Misty Step for mobility. But this is a really great 66 of fire damage. It can be upcast. It's really great. And yeah, we also get our racial one here at this level. But yeah, the big thing is Quicken Spell here, which now you can start to blast enemies with an extra spell per turn. So that's really nice. Now, I would recommend grabbing Mage Hand or whatever one you didn't grab last time. Friends is fantastic for the face of the party, so I'd recommend that one too. Now for our next level. We don't have any concentrations right now, so Hold Person's a really great concentration to have. I do like Misty Step a lot, but there's actually some gear early game that'll give you Misty Step. And for our ability scores, I think it's best to go with ability improvement, and then we can take our Charisma up to... Ideally, you would have Hag's Hair to take it to 18, and then we'll increase it more to 20. But for the purpose of this, we'll take our Intelligence and Charisma up. So that's what we're going to go with there for that level. It's a little bit better if you have the Hag's Hair, because that gives you a bit more freedom in where you put your points. Now, level 3 spells at level 5, we have Fireball, which is really the big buff of this build. 8d6 fire damage, really effective. And with a piece of gear, we can cast 3 fireballs per turn, which is just insane. Level 5 is a really big boost in power for everyone, but level 6, this is when we get the elemental affinity, so we add our charisma modifier to fire damage, so we get a +4 to fire damage, soon to be +5, and then we also get the elemental affinity resistance, so this, when you cast a spell that deals a damage of the type associated with your dragon ancestry, you can spend 1 sorcery point to gain resistance to that, so that's really great if you're in like a area with a lot of fire damage, and there is a lot of fire damage in this game, so the elemental affinity is actually pretty powerful. Even though you don't want to usually spend fire or cast fire spells on creatures that are resistant to fire, we want to take haste here. Counterspell or haste, but haste, twinned haste, it's the most powerful thing a sorcerer can do. So it gives you another action. So if you twin haste, give it to yourself, you get another action, so you can just cast a spell. It's amazing. And then you get +2 to your armor class, become faster, and you can give it to another player. So always twin your haste. Always, always, always. Now, level 7. This is when we get our next level spell, and I think Wall of Fire is pretty good. Typically at level 4, there's like a couple options that are good, and Counterspell is always a good one, but for this build, Wall of Fire. Wall of Fire is like a crowd control damage, it's a 5d8, and you can make a big wall along. It stops enemies, but they also run through it most of the time and take damage, which is really nice, so really easy damage. At level 8, we'll get ourselves another feat. And I would recommend for this level taking Counterspell, try to stop a spell from being cast, which is just very effective for keeping your team alive. Now, as for the ability scores, we can go a few different ways here. So if you don't have the Constitution Amulet, Warcaster is great. You gain advantage on saving throws and maintain concentration. But I think it's actually best to go with the ability score. If we had the Hags here, we would have had 20 Charisma, and then you can put the rest into Intelligence. But we're going to take Charisma up to 20. It's a really great way to go about doing this. And then for our spells at level 5. So level 5 spells doesn't have as much that appeals to us as other levels. Cone of Cold is typically one of the best spells that you can get here. 8d8 cold damage that can be doubled in water for 128 damage, which is amazing, but that's not the focus of this build. So I think that Hold Monster is really great. You can also swap out Hold Person for Hold Monster if you want, because it will work on people as well. But as far as the levels go at this level, I think that that's probably the best one that we can go with. So we'll go with that there for our next level. And typically you're going to want to use Scorching Ray upcast around this level until you get to level 12-ish. And then we get another cantrip, so you can take whatever you find that'd be most useful for you. Friends is usually the face of the party who wants to have that. Cloud Kill can have some useful interactions if you have like a Necromancer, because zombies don't take poison damage, so you can use this and reposition it. But I do think at level 5, like most of our spell slots are going to be used on Scorching Ray and Fireball upcast, so you can go backwards and get something like Protection from Energy, which is nice just to keep your survivability high. We can even go back to the earlier levels. If you find that you're not burning out your level 1 spell slots, even Misty Step is good to take, or Mirror Image to increase armor class by 9. We get another meta magic. I would take Subtle Spell to silence enemy, or be able to cast spells while silenced, which is just really nice to have. Now, level 11 is when we get ourselves the max level spell slot. So there are some really great options here. I like to just have Chain Lightning. I think it's really great, but this doesn't fit with the Fire Sorcerer that much. But 10d8 of lightning damage, and you can bounce around to multiple targets. It's always a nice thing to have. Eye Bite can be good too, so you can put creatures asleep, and you can continually put them to sleep for 10 turns, which are really nice. And Globe of Invulnerability, create a barrier that makes creatures and objects inside immune to all damage. That's another really great option to go with, but another option to have is, if you want to wear light armor, is add in the Barbarian, because we're going to get it'll add Constitution to our armor class, which is really nice. So the unarmored, add your Constitution modifier to your armor class. It's really great if we're going with this kind of armor, which this armor is not optimal at all for this, but just it's a good thing to have. The Barbarian adds a bit of dialogue, and we want to add in the Wizard too. So I guess the best way to go about doing this, you could start with Barbarian for the Sorcerer also gets Constitution saving throw proficiency. It's not a major deal, but adding in the Wizard allows us to choose a bunch of different spells that we normally would not get. So we can go with Blade Ward and Light. And then for our spells, I wanted this for Grease. And also the Wizard gets to be able to scribe spells And since we have enough to get to level 6 spells with the 1 level of wizard and 10 levels of sorcerer, we can scribe scrolls all the way to level 10, or level 6, which we don't really need, but it's a nice thing to have. Now, mage armor we already have built in, so we don't need to take that. We already have shield, even though for some reason it's not showing up as shield there, but fog cloud, grease, thunderwave for the pushback is kind of nice. Sleep is kind of useless later on in the game. I like Find Familiar just to have another creature on the battlefield, and then even something like False Life can give you temporary health points, which can be good, or Tasha's Hideous Laughter for knocking a creature prone. Now we get 4 spells here, so I would go with Grease for sure, because you can turn this into Fire Surface. Fog Cloud to blind people, and we'll take Shield there, because I'm not sure why it didn't take from Sorcerer. But yeah, this is where the build gets kind of interesting, because with the Constitution defense from the Barbarian, we get a +6 with the Constitution amulet. So we have 26 armor in clothing, and that can be further taken up with like this Vesta Soul Rejuvenation, and then also using I guess we have all the items for increased armor on. But yeah, the Pyro Quickness hat is a big focus of this build. So when you deal fire damage with a leveled spell, you burn yourself and gain an additional bonus action this round. Now this is bugged, because if you use your normal action, it'll give you 2 bonus actions, but then for some reason, whenever you use a meta magic, it uses both your bonus actions. So start with a quicken spell. So we'd quicken, I'll do that in a moment, I'll explain in a moment, but also I like to have the +1 armor class from these 3 items. It's really nice to have. This gives a +2 to armor class. It's best on a monk, but there are some other options for clothing that'll give a +2 to armor class, like the Robe of the Weave, which is a pretty good one to have. So the Robe of the Weave gives you a +1 to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. And whenever you succeed a saving throw against a spell, you get 1 to 6 health. So that's probably one of the best in-slot clothing options. It gives us a 27 armor class, which is just silly for wearing clothing. But that's due to adding in that 1 level of Barbarian, which gives us a lot of survivability, despite us probably not wanting to rage often. The Daredevil Gloves gives us a +1 to a spell attack rolls, and your ranged spell attacks can be made as melee if you're in close range, and they can be cycled off on the right-hand side here. So that is really nice. Now, typically what we want to do is we'd want to use our Quicken spell and then cast a Fire spell. I'm not sure if this is going to give you the bonus action, but we'll just attack Mizora here. And I'm not sure if that gave us a bonus action back or not, but typically when you deal with the Pyro Quickness hat, you'll get burn on yourself too. So when you deal fire damage with a level spell, you burn yourself and gain an additional bonus action this round. Another great option is to go with the Helldusk armor, because the Helldusk armor will give you proficiency in it. So we don't even have to take, wouldn't take Barbarian at that point. We just go with 11 levels of Sorcerer, take Chain Lightning. But when you succeed a saving throw, your caster receives burning, and then you have resistance to fire damage, cannot be burned. So it negates you'll get the burn from this, but this will negate it. So they actually go together very well. But then you still get that bonus action. So typical way about going about it would be to like cast Quickened Fireball. And this may get scratch, we'll see. And then you get another bonus action back from doing that. So really nice in that regard, because you can cast Fireball with your normal action, quicken another fireball, do 3 fireballs. So it does get pretty powerful if you go about it that way in Baldur's Gate 3. It's a really effective build, although I do prefer Storm Sorcerer or a Cold Sorcerer, which I have build guides for both of those. They have much higher damage than this, but if you really want to play as a Fire Sorcerer, this is the way to do it. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, hit that subscribe button below. I appreciate any and all support. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.